The elevator's sudden jolt plunged Natalie Burke into darkness. "Help!" she cried, claustrophobia instantly overwhelming the normally composed CEO of Elevate Tech. Her panicked voice echoed through the empty stairwell of the modest apartment building, her temporary refuge after her company's stock had plummeted amid scandal. 2 floors up, Ryan Coleman froze mid-step, his military-trained instincts immediately alert. "Daddy, someone's crying," whispered 6-year-old Emma, clutching her ballet bag. Ryan assessed the situation in seconds. "Stay here, princess," he instructed, already moving toward the elevator shaft. Setting his powerful frame against the metal doors, he began to force them apart with sheer muscular strength, unaware that the woman he was about to rescue would one day change the course of his life. Ryan's hands gripped the elevator doors, his biceps straining against the fabric of his shirt as he braced his feet firmly on the landing. Years of military training and maintaining his physical fitness as both therapy and necessity had given him exceptional strength. Emma watched in awe as her father's determination manifested in the slow separation of the heavy metal doors. "Go, Daddy! You can do it!" she cheered, jumping excitedly on the landing. The doors resisted stubbornly, designed specifically to prevent forced entry, but Ryan's resolve was stronger than any safety mechanism. With a grunt of effort that echoed through the stairwell, he forced the doors to part an inch, then 2. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the gap widened. With one final, powerful surge, the doors yielded, opening wide enough to reveal the elevator car stuck about 3 feet below the landing. Inside, Natalie Burke sat crumpled in the corner, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, mascara streaked down her face from panicked tears. The powerful businesswoman who commanded boardrooms with unwavering confidence had been reduced to a trembling figure in the darkness. Her breath came in short, desperate gasps as she fought against the overwhelming sensation of the walls closing in around her. A phobia she'd successfully hidden throughout her professional life until this moment. "It's okay now. I've got you," Ryan said, his voice suddenly gentle, a stark contrast to the raw power he'd just displayed. He knelt at the opening and reached his strong arms into the elevator. "Can you stand? Take my hands." Natalie looked up at her rescuer, broad-shouldered, with kind eyes that contrasted with his intimidating physique. The security of his steady gaze provided an anchor amidst her panic. She placed her shaking hands in his, surprised by the gentleness of his grip despite the obvious strength in his fingers. In one fluid motion that demonstrated both power and precision, Ryan lifted her completely out of the elevator and onto the landing beside him. For a moment, Natalie clung to him, her body still shaking with adrenaline and residual fear, the scent of his cologne mingling with the clean smell of laundry detergent oddly comforting in its normalcy. Ryan steadied her with a careful hand at her elbow, giving her the time she needed to compose herself. Neither of them realized, in that moment, how their lives had already intersected once before, when Natalie's company had rejected Ryan's innovative patent application without a second look, nearly a year ago. A decision that had altered the course of his career and, by extension, his life with Emma. "You're safe now," Ryan assured her, stepping back to give her space once she seemed steady, the professional distance he naturally maintained with strangers returning now that the immediate crisis had passed. It was then that Emma approached cautiously, her ballet tutu swishing as she walked, pink sparkly shoes tapping lightly on the tile floor. "Are you okay, lady?" she asked, her small face serious with concern, dark curls framing eyes that held the same kindness as her father. "My daddy's super strong. He can fix anything." The child's innocent pride in her father brought an unexpected smile to Natalie's face, the first genuine one in weeks. "Your daddy is very brave," she agreed, wiping away the evidence of her tears with the back of her hand, trying to regain some semblance of the composure she was known for in the corporate world. "Thank you both." As her heart rate returned to normal and the claustrophobic panic subsided, Natalie's professional instincts began to reassert themselves. She straightened her silk blouse and ran a hand through her disheveled hair, mental armor sliding back into place with each small gesture. "I'm Natalie Burke, apartment 6CC. I just moved in a few days ago." Ryan nodded, introducing himself and Emma with a warmth that seemed reserved primarily for his daughter. As they walked up the remaining stairs together, none of them could have imagined how this chance encounter would alter the course of their lives forever. How a moment of vulnerability, in a darkened elevator would lead to revelations that would challenge everything they thought they knew about success, failure, and what truly matters in life. Ryan Coleman had not always been just Emma's dad. 3 years ago, he had been a rising star in military engineering, developing cutting-edge security systems before transitioning to the private sector. His wife Amy's cancer diagnosis had changed everything. The 18 months of her illness had reshaped his priorities completely, and her death when Emma was just 3 had left him determined to be both mother and father to their daughter. He'd walked away from a prestigious position with a defense contractor, instead establishing himself as a freelance consultant who could work primarily from home. The modest apartment in Brookside Heights wasn't what he'd envisioned for his life, but it provided stability for Emma, and that was all that mattered to him now. Natalie Burke's path to the elevator crisis had been entirely different. The daughter of ambitious academics, she had been raised on a strict diet of achievement and excellence. By 35, she had transformed Elevate Tech from a promising startup into a publicly traded company valued at over $2 billion. But success had come with isolation. 70-hour work weeks left little time for personal connections, and her ruthless business instincts had earned her the nickname the Terminator among competitors. The recent security breach at Elevate Tech had been the first major crisis of her tenure as CEO, sending the company's stock plummeting and putting her leadership under scrutiny. Her temporary relocation to Brookside Heights was meant to be a strategic retreat, a place to regroup away from the financial press's constant attention. The following Saturday, Natalie was organizing her still half-unpacked apartment when a knock came at her door. Opening it, she found Emma Coleman standing there with a homemade card, her father hovering a few steps behind with an apologetic expression. "Emma insisted on inviting you herself," Ryan explained as the little girl thrust the glitter-covered invitation forward. "I'm having a birthday party next Saturday, but," Emma announced proudly, "I'm turning 7. Daddy's making a rocket cake and we're doing science experiments. You have to come, because you're our neighbor, and Daddy says neighbors should be friends." The stream of enthusiastic information was delivered with such earnestness that Natalie found herself charmed despite her usual aversion to children's parties. "Emma, Ms. Burke is probably very busy," Ryan started, but Natalie surprised herself by interrupting. "Actually, I'd love to come," she said, kneeling to Emma's level. "Thank you for inviting me." The smile that bloomed across the child's face was like sunshine breaking through clouds. As Emma skipped back down the hallway to deliver more invitations, Ryan lingered, momentarily. "You don't have to come if you're busy," he said quietly. Emma understands adults have commitments. Something in his considerate tone, so different from the demanding entitlement she encountered in her corporate life, made Natalie all the more determined. "I want to come," she insisted. "It's been a difficult few weeks. A birthday party sounds like exactly what I need." What she didn't say was how lonely her new apartment felt after the adrenaline-fueled days at Elevate Tech's headquarters. How the silence sometimes seemed to press in on her, like the walls of that elevator. The week passed in a blur of crisis management for Natalie. Elevate Tech's lawyers were fighting the patent infringement claims, but investor confidence was shaken. She worked remotely from her apartment, taking video calls and analyzing market data until her eyes burned. By Saturday, the promise of cake and children's laughter felt like an oasis in a desert of spreadsheets and legal jargon. She spent an embarrassing amount of time selecting an appropriate gift, finally settling on a beginner's robotics kit that the store clerk assured her was perfect for scientifically inclined 7-year-olds. When she arrived at the Coleman's apartment, she was surprised by how nervous she felt, more anxious than before presenting to a room of skeptical investors. The door opened to reveal Ryan in a science dad apron, flour dusting his forearms. Behind him, 6 children in safety goggles were gathered around the kitchen table while an impressive rocket-shaped cake dominated the counter. "You came?" Emma exclaimed, breaking away from the group to grab Natalie's hand and pull her inside. "We're making slime, come see!" Natalie allowed herself to be led into the controlled chaos of the party. Accepting the safety goggles, Emma thrust at her with surprising grace. Ryan watched with barely concealed amusement as the polished executive was drawn into measuring cornstarch and food coloring alongside giggling first graders. What struck him most was how quickly she adapted, her natural leadership abilities shifting seamlessly from corporate strategy to ensuring each child had equal turns stirring the goopy mixture. After the experiments, pizza, and an impressively successful rocket cake, the other children departed with goodie bags and slime containers. Natalie found herself lingering, helping Ryan clean up while Emma played with her new presents in her room. "You're good with kids," Ryan observed as they loaded the dishwasher. "Not what I would have expected." Natalie raised an eyebrow. "Because I'm an uptight executive?" she asked, but her tone was light. Ryan smiled, shaking his head. "I didn't say uptight, but yes, most CEOs I've encountered aren't great at getting down on the floor to help make slime." Natalie laughed, surprised at how good it felt. "Most CEOs haven't been trapped in elevators recently. It gives one perspective." As they finished cleaning, Ryan reached for a folder on a high shelf, accidentally knocking down a stack of papers. Natalie bent to help gather them, freezing when a familiar logo caught her eye. Her company's letterhead on a rejection letter. She picked it up slowly, reading the opening lines. "Dear Mr. Coleman, thank you for your submission of the Adaptive Interface Patent application. After careful review, Elevate Tech has decided not to pursue." Her eyes darted to Ryan, who had noticed her expression change. "You submitted a patent to Elevate Tech," she said, her voice carefully neutral. Ryan took the letter from her hand, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "Yes, about 10 months ago." He tucked the letter away, his earlier warmth cooling several degrees. "You've heard of Elevate Tech?" For a moment, Natalie considered deflection, but something about the honest way Ryan had opened his home to her made deception impossible. "I'm the CEO," she admitted quietly. She watched comprehension dawn on his face, followed by a careful masking of whatever emotion had flashed in his eyes. "I see," he said finally. "That's quite a coincidence." An awkward silence stretched between them, broken only when Emma bounded back into the room, clutching Natalie's gift. "Daddy, look what Miss Natalie got me. Can we build it now?" Ryan smiled at his daughter, though Natalie could see the strain around his eyes. "Not tonight, Princess. It's already past bedtime. But maybe tomorrow." He glanced at Natalie. "Thank you for coming. Emma had a wonderful time." The dismissal was polite but clear. Natalie gathered her purse, pausing at the door. "Ryan," she started, not entirely sure what she wanted to say. How did one apologize for a business decision she couldn't even remember making? "Thank you for inviting me, and I'd like to talk sometime about your patent." Ryan nodded once, professional courtesy overriding personal disappointment. "Sure." "Good night, Natalie." As she walked back to her apartment, Natalie felt oddly deflated. The warm glow of the party had been replaced by the familiar weight of corporate responsibility. That night, she pulled up the company's patent application database and searched for Ryan Coleman. What she found kept her awake until dawn. Ryan's patent application hadn't just been rejected. It had been dismissed without proper review. The adaptive interface technology he'd designed would have allowed people with physical disabilities to use touchscreens more effectively, creating personalized response patterns based on user capabilities. It was brilliant, innovative, and had been rejected primarily because Ryan was an independent inventor without corporate backing. The executive who had reviewed it, Jackson Phillips, her now departed chief innovation officer, had simply deemed it not commercially viable enough, despite projections that clearly indicated otherwise. Natalie recognized the casual arrogance in the internal notes, the dismissal of ideas not generated within their own R&D department. It was exactly the kind of corporate blindness she had promised herself she would prevent when she founded Elevate Tech. The next morning, Natalie waited in the lobby of their building, 2 coffee cups in hand. When Ryan emerged with Emma for their Sunday morning routine, she approached cautiously. "I was hoping we might talk," she said, offering him the coffee. "After Emma's at her playdate, perhaps?" Ryan studied her for a long moment before accepting the cup. "Sarah's mom is picking Emma up in 20 minutes, he said finally. "You can come back around 10. It wasn't exactly warm, but it was an opening. Natalie nodded, relief washing through her. "I'll bring bagels," she promised. Emma looked between them curiously. "Are you and Daddy going to be friends?" she asked, with a child's directness. Natalie smiled at her. "I hope so, Emma. I really hope so. At precisely 10 o'clock, Natalie knocked on the Coleman's door, a bag of fresh bagels in hand. Ryan let her in, the apartment noticeably quieter without Emma's exuberant presence. I looked up your patent application, Natalie said, diving straight to the point as they sat at the kitchen table. It should never have been rejected. Ryan's expression remained carefully neutral. Business decisions get made every day. I've moved on, but the subtle tightening of his hand around his coffee mug told a different story. Natalie shook her head, placing her tablet between them with his application displayed. This wasn't a business decision. It was bureaucratic laziness and institutional arrogance. Your design is brilliant, Ryan. It could help thousands of people. For the next hour, they discussed the technical specifications of his invention. As Ryan explained the inspiration, watching a child with cerebral palsy struggle with standard touchscreens, his professional reserve melted away, replaced by the passionate engineer. Natalie recognized the spark of genuine innovation, the human-centered thinking that drove truly meaningful technology. Why didn't you submit it elsewhere after we rejected? She asked finally. Ryan's expression clouded. My wife died 6 months before I submitted it. Cancer. The application process took everything I had emotionally at the time, while also caring for Emma. When it was rejected, he shrugged. I had to prioritize. Emma needed stability more than I needed to fight corporate windmills. The personal revelation hung in the air between them. Natalie thought about the man who had pried open elevator doors with his bare hands to rescue a stranger, who created science experiments for his daughter's birthday, who put aside his own dreams to ensure his child's security. I want to make this right, she said finally. Not because you saved me from the elevator, because it's the right thing to do, and because your invention deserves to exist in the world. Ryan studied her face, searching for insincerity or corporate calculation. Finding none, he nodded slowly. What exactly are you proposing? Natalie leaned forward, energized in a way she hadn't felt since the early days of founding her company. A proper review, for starters. And if it's as good as I believe it is, a development partnership that respects your ownership of the concept. Over the following weeks, a new pattern emerged in the lives of the building's most unlikely neighbors. Ryan's patent application underwent a thorough review by Elevate Tech's best engineers, all of whom confirmed Natalie's assessment of its brilliance. Meanwhile, Emma's robot kit became a bridge between the three of them, with evening building sessions becoming a regular occurrence. Natalie, who had never considered herself good with children, found herself enchanted by Emma's curiosity and unfettered imagination. And Ryan, despite his initial wariness, couldn't help but appreciate the way Natalie engaged with his daughter, never talking down to her, always challenging her to think one step further. Why don't you have any kids? Emma asked one evening as they adjusted the robot's sensor array. The question caught Natalie off guard. She looked to Ryan, expecting him to intervene with a lesson on inappropriate personal questions, but he merely raised an eyebrow, equally curious about her answer. I've been focused on building my company, Natalie said finally. It's a bit like raising a child in some ways. It needs constant attention and care to grow properly. Emma considered this seriously. But a company can't hug you back, she observed with devastating simplicity. And it doesn't make you birthday cards. Ryan nearly choked on his coffee, but Natalie merely nodded. That's very true, Emma. I hadn't thought of it quite that way before. As spring blossomed in Chicago, so too did something unexpected between Ryan and Natalie. It wasn't just the patent development, which was progressing rapidly toward a prototype phase. It was the small moments. Ryan instinctively reaching out to steady Natalie when she stumbled on the stairs. Natalie remembering exactly how he took his coffee, the lingering goodnight at her door after Emma had fallen asleep during movie night. Neither of them acknowledged it directly, both too scarred by past losses, too wary of future complications. But it was there in the glances that lasted a beat too long, in the way they gravitated toward each other in shared spaces. Their comfortable routine was shattered on a Tuesday morning when Ryan received an urgent text from Natalie. Turn on business news now. On the screen, Ryan saw the headline scrolling across the bottom. Rival Tech announces groundbreaking adaptive interface for disabled users. The technology being described was eerily similar to his own patent application, the one that was still under confidential review at Elevate Tech. The reporter was praising Rivaltech's CEO, Andrew Morgan, for his innovative vision and commitment to accessibility. Ryan felt his stomach drop as his phone rang. "Did you see it?" Natalie's voice was tight with controlled fury. "I'm already investigating how this happened. This is corporate espionage, plain and simple." But online speculation was already building in a different, more damaging direction. By afternoon, tech blogs were questioning whether Elevate Tech's CEO had deliberately passed Ryan's technology to their competitor as revenge for some unknown slight. The narrative was absurd, but in the volatile world of tech journalism, it gained traction with alarming speed. Conspiracy theories flourished. Had Natalie used Ryan's invention to save her struggling company's stock price? Was their coincidental meeting in the same building actually an elaborate setup? By evening, photographers had discovered their building, camping outside to capture images of the scheming CEO and the duped inventor. Ryan watched the chaos unfold with growing concern. When Emma came home from school in tears because a classmate had told her, "Your dad's girlfriend is a thief," his concern hardened into anger. He canceled his scheduled meeting with Elevate Tech's development team and stopped responding to Natalie's increasingly urgent messages. The trust that had been so carefully built between them seemed to evaporate in the heat of public scrutiny. That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Is Ms. Natalie a bad person, Daddy?" Ryan sighed, sitting on the edge of her bed. "No, Princess. But sometimes grown-up things get complicated. We need to wait and see what really happened." Natalie, meanwhile, was conducting a thorough internal investigation. Someone had accessed Ryan's confidential files and transmitted them to Rival Tech. That much was clear from the server logs. But who? And why now, just when the prototype was nearing completion? The most damning evidence pointed to her former executive assistant, Vanessa, who had left abruptly for another opportunity 3 weeks earlier. Natasha had conveniently joining Rival Tech days later. The betrayal stung professionally. But what hurt more was Ryan's silence. After everything they'd shared, didn't he trust her enough to at least hear her out? The thought of losing not just a promising business partnership, but the unexpected connection with both Ryan and Emma left her feeling hollow in a way that corporate setbacks never had. On Thursday afternoon, with the media frenzy still at full pitch, Natalie made a decision. If Ryan wouldn't answer her calls, she would go to the one place she knew mattered most to him, Emma's school. She timed her arrival for pickup, hoping to catch him there. What she hadn't expected was to find Emma alone on a bench near the playground, her small shoulders hunched as 2 older girls stood over her. Natalie. Her smile was heavy, her heart overflowing, and finally, her heart overflowing, her heart still over her. Natalie was too far away to hear the words, but the body language was unmistakable. Emma was being bullied, and it was almost certainly related to the public scandal involving her father. Without hesitation, Natalie strode across the schoolyard, corporate crisis management forgotten in the face of a more immediate concern. "Is everything okay here, Emma?" she asked, her voice carrying the same authority she used in boardrooms. The older girls turned, recognition dawning as they realized who had interrupted their torment. Emma looked up, her eyes widening in surprise and relief. "Miss Natalie," the bullies retreated quickly, but the damage was already done. Emma's artwork lay scattered on the ground, some pages deliberately torn. Natalie knelt beside her, helping gather the ruined drawings. "They said Daddy and you were criminals," Emma whispered, a tear sliding down her cheek. "They said we'd have to move away because you did bad things." Natalie felt a surge of protective anger unlike anything she'd experienced in her professional battles. "Emma, look at me," she said gently but firmly. "Those girls were wrong. Your daddy is one of the best people I've ever met. And sometimes, when grown-ups do important things, other grown-ups get jealous and say untrue things." She picked up one of the torn drawings, a colorful depiction of what appeared to be 3 stick figures holding hands. "Is this us?" she asked softly. Emma nodded. "It was for Daddy, to make him happy again. He's been sad since the people on TV started saying mean things." Natalie carefully folded the torn drawing and placed it in her pocket. "I'm going to fix this, Emma. The mean things people are saying, and your drawing too. I promise." What neither of them realized was that Ryan had arrived at the school, witnessing the entire interaction from the edge of the playground. He had seen the bullies retreat, seen Natalie's gentle handling of Emma's distress, seen the protective arm she'd placed around his daughter's shoulders. It was a side of Natalie Burke that business competitors never saw. As he approached, Emma spotted him first. "Daddy, Miss Natalie came to help me," she called, her earlier tears already forgotten in the excitement of this unexpected reunion. Natalie stood, uncertainty flickering across her face as she met Ryan's gaze. "I was hoping to talk to you," she said simply. "I found evidence of who leaked the patent." Later that evening, after Emma was asleep, Ryan and Natalie sat at his kitchen table reviewing the evidence she had compiled. Server access logs, suspicious email patterns, and financial transactions all pointed to Vanessa's deliberate theft of the patent information. "She was planted by rival tech months ago," Natalie explained. "It wasn't just your patent. She took marketing strategies, client lists, everything she could access. We were the targets, not you specifically." Ryan nodded slowly, processing the information. "But why didn't you tell me this immediately?" Natalie's expression tightened. "I tried. You wouldn't answer my calls or texts. And frankly, I was hurt that you could believe, even for a moment, that I would betray you that way." The admission hung between them, unexpectedly vulnerable from a woman known for her unflappable professional demeanor. Ryan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't really believe it," he admitted. "But when Emma came home crying, I guess I needed someone to blame. The whole situation felt out of control." He met her eyes directly. "I'm sorry I didn't trust you." Natalie nodded, accepting the apology. "So what happens now?" she asked. Ryan's expression hardened with determination. "Now we fight back. Together. Rival tech stole my design, but they don't understand the underlying architecture. The system they're rushing to market will fail spectacularly without the adaptations I've been working on since the original submission." Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan and Natalie executed a carefully orchestrated plan. First, they documented every piece of evidence proving the corporate espionage. Then, rather than pursuing a lengthy legal battle, they accelerated development of the improved version of Ryan's technology. Natalie leveraged her media contacts to arrange a major technology demonstration that would coincide exactly with Rivaltech's official product launch. The pressure was intense, with both of them working late into the night after Emma was asleep. But there was something different about this kind of pressure. They were fighting for something that mattered, side by side. The night before the demonstration, Ryan found Natalie still working in his living room, well past midnight, surrounded by presentation notes. "You should get some sleep," he said, offering her a cup of tea. She accepted it gratefully, rubbing her tired eyes. "So should you. Big day tomorrow." They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Natalie spoke again. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that working with you on this project has reminded me why I started Elevate Tech in the first place. It was never about stock prices or market share. It was about creating technology that actually improved people's lives." Ryan studied her face in the soft lamplight, seeing beyond the CEO to the passionate innovator beneath. "We make a good team," he said simply. Natalie smiled, suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how the late hour and shared purpose had created an intimacy that transcended their professional collaboration. "We do," she agreed softly. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibility. Then, with a gentle boldness that surprised them both, Ryan reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Natalie," he began, his voice low, "after tomorrow." But the sentence remained unfinished as Emma's small voice interrupted from the hallway. "Daddy, I had a bad dream." The moment broke, but the promise of it remained as they exchanged a look of mutual understanding before Ryan went to comfort his daughter. The technology demonstration the following day exceeded even their most optimistic expectations. While Rivaltech's executives were fielding increasingly difficult questions about their malfunctioning product across town, Ryan and Natalie unveiled the true adaptive interface to an audience of industry leaders, accessibility advocates, and technology journalists. Ryan demonstrated the system's capabilities with confidence and passion, explaining how the technology learned from each user's unique patterns to create truly personalized experiences. But it was when a young girl with limited motor control successfully navigated a complex game using the adaptive system that the room erupted in applause. In that moment of triumph, Ryan's eyes found Natalie's across the crowded room, sharing a private victory amid the public success. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Rival Tech's stock plummeted as the evidence of corporate espionage became public. Elevate Tech announced a formal partnership with Ryan Coleman, with plans to make the adaptive technology available at accessible price points for educational and healthcare applications. What the press releases didn't mention was the personal transformation that had occurred alongside the professional victory. How a chance encounter in a stuck elevator had led to healing for two people who had each, in their own way, been stuck in emotional limbo. 3 months later, Natalie stood before Elevate Tech's board of directors presenting a complete overhaul of the company's innovation pipeline. Our new Open Door initiative will create pathways for independent inventors to receive fair consideration regardless of their institutional backing, she explained, clicking through slides that detailed the program. The Ryan Coleman Grant for Accessible Technology will provide funding and mentorship to developers creating solutions for underserved populations. The board members nodded approvingly. It was hard to argue with success. And the adaptive interface had generated more positive press than anything in the company's history. And speaking of Ryan Coleman, the board chair commented as the presentation concluded, we understand he's considering our offer to join as Director of Innovation. Natalie smiled. He is. The flexible schedule was key. His priority remains being there for his daughter. What she didn't share was how that priority had expanded to include herself, family dinners at her apartment, weekend outings to Chicago's museums, quiet evenings helping Emma with increasingly complex robot designs. The relationship that had begun with a crisis had deepened into something neither had been looking for, but both now treasured. On Emma's first day of second grade, Ryan and Natalie stood together at the school gate. Remember, if anyone says anything unkind, what do you do? Ryan asked, adjusting her backpack strap. Emma rolled her eyes, with the exaggerated patience of a 7-year-old. I stand tall, speak clearly, and remember that I know the truth, even if they don't, she recited. And then I tell Miss Peterson if it continues. Natalie smiled, impressed as always by the resilience of this remarkable child. You're going to have a wonderful day, she assured Emma. And we'll be right here at 3 o'clock to hear all about it. Emma beamed at them both, before darting off to join her friends, her earlier anxiety forgotten. As they walked back toward their building, Ryan took Natalie's hand, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of established connection. She called us we, he observed. That's new, Natalie nodded, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the summer morning. Is that okay? She asked, a rare moment of uncertainty from the normally decisive executive. Ryan stopped walking, turning to face her directly. More than okay, he said softly. Emma asked me last night if you were going to be her new mom someday. Natalie's breath caught. What did you tell her? Ryan smiled, the same smile that had first reassured her when he pulled her from the darkened elevator. I told her that some questions are for grown-ups to figure out first, but that you already make us happier than we've been in a very long time. Natalie stepped closer, professional composure momentarily abandoned as she rested her forehead against his chest. You know, most relationship milestones don't involve corporate espionage and public technology demonstrations, she murmured. Ryan laughed, the sound rumbling pleasantly against her ear. We've never done things the conventional way, he pointed out, starting with getting stuck in an elevator and having to be rescued by a suspiciously muscular engineer. Natalie looked up at him, her expression turning serious despite her smile. Best elevator malfunction of my life, she said softly. As they continued their walk home, plans for the day's work already being discussed, they passed the elevator that had first brought them together. The out-of-order sign was long gone, the mechanism finally repaired properly. Want to test it out? Ryan asked with a mischievous grin. Prove you've conquered your claustrophobia? Natalie hesitated only briefly before nodding. With you? I'm not afraid. They stepped inside together, the doors closing on the outside world. As the elevator began its smooth ascent, Natalie leaned into Ryan's solid presence, reflecting on how, sometimes, the moments that seem most like entrapment can actually be the first step toward freedom, if only the right person comes along to help force the doors open.